you got to stay out of the cities. I mean, we just saw what happened in France. This is not in a vacuum. It's going to happen in other countries. It's happening in other countries, and as the money substitute, as the dollar itself dies faster, more of these cities are going to start to burn. So you got to stay out of it. And I don't want to get all apocalyptic, and I don't think the world is going to end, but there's going to be some problems, and it's going to be up to us to rebuild what we can.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty in Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for July 4th through July 11th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we featured 2023 silver Philharmonics at $3.79 over spot, and Ital Preziosi 10-ounce silver bars at just $2.79 over spot per ounce. First, frequently regarded as one of the most beautiful sovereign coins, the Austrian Philharmonic portrays instruments from the Vienna Orchestra on one side and the grand pipe organ from the famed Augsburg Golden Hall on the other, all in 3/9 fine pure silver, with a face value of €1.5. These 2023 Philharmonics come 20 to a tube, 500 to a box, are just $3.79 over spot, and are IRA eligible. Next, our Ital Preziosi 10-ounce silver bars not only maintain a great level of liquidity, but also boast one of our lowest premiums in months, at $2.79 over spot per ounce. They come individually numbered, are available in any quantity, and come 50 to a box. Both our specials this week are IRA eligible. And if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty in Finance. And back with us today is our good friend Rafi Farber from the Endgame Investor. Rafi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me again, Elijah. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Well, it's great to have you. Our viewers always appreciate our conversations. I'd like to discuss first what is happening in the silver market. It seems like the open interest on the COMEX is at or near 10-year lows, as you've reported. And it seems like whenever this is low, it signals a trend change. You're saying trend change could be imminent. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's not 100% correlation. It's not a perfect correlation. It's just another signal that you're going to have to, add fundamentals on top of. You can't just go by open interest, but it is a useful tool sometimes. So open interest is basically the amount of contracts that are open, long on one side or short on the other side, that exists in the futures market on the COMEX. So I think they're at something like 115,000. And I think the 10-year low is in 2013 at around 112 or something, or 113. The exact numbers don't really matter, and we don't have to necessarily break the 2013 low for something to be set off and it's not like a magic potion or a magic spell or anything. But it does tell you, a low open interest will tell you that that longs, the weak-handed longs, the ones that would have sold out, they already did. And the shorts that would have wanted to cover, they already did. So the people that are still hanging on, they're either new traders that just established their positions only recently, and there aren't many sellers left. Otherwise, the open interest would be higher, because anytime somebody wants to buy a silver contract, somebody has to sell silver short in order to do that. And they can either own the silver or they might not. So if they don't have it, they'd have to buy it somewhere. That's how the futures market works in the most basic sense. So we're at the lowest since 2013, and 2013 didn't really mark a low at that point. The low was in 2015, so even at that point we were 2 years away from it. But more recently, if you look at the since 2020, when something about the futures market really changed, every time there's been either an intermediate low or some kind of change point in the open interest, you see a trend change, and as it starts to rise, then the silver price starts to rise with it, most of the time. So I'm assuming that we're in the same paradigm since 2020, and I'm assuming that a trend change is either imminent or it's already happening. Could be a few more days more of a sell-off because of these employment numbers or something that came out today. But I think we're close enough, and I've seen this pattern enough times that I don't want to be caught, you know, too scared to pull the trigger. I'd rather buy a little bit early and be a little bit off by a few days or weeks than look for an exact bottom and then pat myself in the back for guessing correctly, because that doesn't really matter.
That is interesting, and we have seen obviously in the last, I guess, few months here, the official inflation rate here in the U.S. falling. But as we see more money entering the system again, how can you expand on how you see that impacting prices? And also this whole thing with the reverse repo, this is one of the reasons why money is flowing back into the system. How is this going to impact the banking system?
It's still unclear exactly what's happening, but we do have daily data on the reverse repos. The reverse repos, forget about the name. It's just extra money that couldn't. They printed so much money in 2020 and 2021, bringing interest rates to these crazy lows, that not all of it could fit in. And what does that mean? It couldn't fit in? Well, it cost banks too much money to hold this cash, so they gave it back to the Fed, who gave them, and they swapped it for securities instead. And you can earn some amount of interest on the securities, so it made sense for them to give the money back to the Fed. It was just too much for them to handle. But now that interest rates are much higher, and the Treasury is selling T-bills again at pretty high rates, like 5.5%, around there, then it makes sense for the money to come out of reverse repos, where they're only paying like 5.15%, and catch the arbitrage, about 5.5% in Treasury bills. So all this money is going back into the banking system, money that didn't make it into the banking system, that was printed but didn't make it in. So now that it's coming in, there's going to be more money available to bid prices of anything that people buy up. And the question is, what are they going to buy? Since we're in such a high interest rate environment now, at least nominally, that should discourage money from flowing into the high orders of production, and it should encourage less supply, less capital investment. That's what high interest rates do. So in the immediate sense, higher interest rates quash demand, which is why it appears that high interest rates make prices fall. But in the longer term, they squash supply more than they squash demand, which makes prices rise again, which is, I think, where we're on the cusp of seeing higher interest rates causing higher consumer prices. And then people realize that raising interest rates is not going to stop what they call inflation. It's just going to make it worse.
No, when it comes to the inflation, I mean, we often talk when we have you on about the end game, right? And in your view, the end game is when the whole fiat currency system collapses and we see hyperinflation. You recently mentioned in a video that the precious metals, gold and silver, in the event of hyperinflation, in the end game, are more important than any other commodity. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, that seems like a crazy statement, because when you're in an emergency, you mostly think of food and water and maybe ammunition, and not necessarily gold and silver. People say that, oh, well, if zombies are coming after your stuff, don't you want food, water, and guns? And what are you going to do with a hunk of gold and silver? You can't do anything with that. If we think a little bit more realistically, the reason that the zombies would be coming, so to speak, is because the division of labor is broken down. And the only way a division of labor can really and truly break down is if there is no money to divide labor with. You can't take a derivative of everything. There's gold and silver, and there's derivatives of gold and silver. The dollar is the preeminent derivative of gold. But if the dollar doesn't work anymore, you can't go above the pyramid to substitute a money derivative for a lesser derivative. You have to go back down the pyramid to the base, which is still alive. So in an environment where money substitutes are not working, where the dollar is not working, the first thing you need to do is reestablish a division of labor, so people know what to do with their time, so that they're not busy stealing from each other. So there is food and water. Food and water exists around the world in different pockets. Like we saw this with toilet paper right at the beginning of the lockdowns. Like where there was a toilet paper shortage, but there wasn't really a toilet paper shortage. You could look around and find stashes of toilet paper in different places, like, for example, hotels, which had like closets full of toilet paper. If you were smart enough and you would go to these places and you'd say, look, I'll buy your toilet paper for like $10 a roll or whatever it was, and they'd sell it to you. So it's not like It's not like commodities don't exist. It's just that without money, they can't be distributed. So yes, food and water is important. Yes, oil is important. But in order to get these commodities flowing through an economy, that's the point of the monetary commodity, which is gold and silver. So that's what you need in an economy, and then everything starts flowing again with difficulty. Poor people can't afford it, but rich people can. And then when the rich people have it, they can sell it, to other people, and then it filters down. That's how it works. So yeah, when there is hyperinflation and a money substitute is no longer working, that's the priority. It's more important than any other commodity, because without it, a division of labor will break down, and you will have a breakdown of society. And I am expecting a degree of a breakdown of society, but the faster we can get real money circulating in the economy, the less of a breakdown it will be, and the more we can save.
And I know last time we had you on, we talked about kind of the inflation of everything and how it's the money that's being inflated, but it's also just society in general in many different areas. I did want to get to how, when it comes to the monetary system, a lot of the times, a lot of these problems actually tie back to how the money is being corrupted in itself. And you've recently mentioned on a video that we currently are kind of on a gold standard that's been corrupted in some respect, because money always has to have reference back to what it could purchase in the past. And if you go back far enough, the dollar was connected to gold. So the only reason that the dollar has value right now is because in the past it was connected to gold. But that whole connection has really been corrupted since we've gone off the gold standard technically on an official level, and things have been inflated. So can you expand on how really we need to think of the currency system kind of being still backed by gold but corrupted right now?
Yes, that's what it always is. I mean, if there is one major error that the gold and silver community makes, it's an error of nomenclature. This myth that we are off the gold standard, or that there even is such a thing as fiat currency. If I have a unique message more than that other people don't emphasize, and it's like my contribution to this community, it is that there is no such thing as a fiat currency. It is impossible. Because when you say a fiat currency from above, it's just dictated to have value. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because if a government can just dictate value, then why do prices ever change? Right? It's just saying the word fiat currency just means that price controls work. It's another way of saying that, and that's impossible. So really what we have is, it's a corrupted gold standard. It's this gold standard that's a lie. And really what Nixon was doing when he closed the gold window, he wasn't closing the entire gold window. He was closing his access point to it, or the foreign central bank's access to the Fed's central bank gold stash. That was one aspect of the gold window, but the gold window is still open. Because why? Because you can go to a coin shop and give them a hunk of about $2,000 and you'll get a gold ounce. That's a window. You can still do it. Now, if you look, so when you're trying to answer the question, what gives the dollar value? It's not the fact that the government says it has value. That's a tautology, right? If that were true, then if the dollar has value because the government can tax, then hyperinflation would never happen. Or are we trying to say that hyperinflation only happens in countries where governments can't tax you? Well, no, hyperinflation happens in countries where governments can tax you. So obviously it's not the taxing that gives their currencies value. What it is the exchange rate with gold, or the exchange rate with a different currency that's exchangeable for gold, or somewhere down the derivative line, a connection to gold. So look, empirically, you can say in a positivist way, the praxeological Austrian school argument would be what gives the dollar value is its exchangeability with gold. That's just a factual, logical statement. It can't be any other thing. But you could say to give empirical weight to that logical conclusion for empirical evidence, it doesn't prove it, but it illustrates it, that every single hyperinflationary economy that's ever existed, the price of that currency in gold goes to infinity. That's the other side of hyperinflation. When you can no longer exchange it for gold, you can no longer exchange the currency for anything at all. And then everything becomes infinite. And gold is just the measure for that. because again, back to the regression principle, the regression theorem. There's no other way to set prices other than to look into the past. And when the currency is no longer exchangeable for gold, so that avenue of value exchange is now gone. You have to dig underneath it. And it's really the source of all the corruption that is going on today. All of it can be traced back to the money itself, because money is really how we value our activity. And our activity is inflated, and it inflates everything. It inflates education. It inflates communication. It inflates medicine. People go through the motions, right? When the Fed prints money, it's not like they're mining anything or actually producing value or mining gold and silver. They're going through the motions of creating more money derivatives, or in hospitals, they're going through the motions of what seems like health, but it's not really that. It's something else. It's some kind of robotic thing that has been drilled into people that are just taking down notes in a medical school and not really connecting to anything. Everything is sort of the skeletal structure of what it should be, but there's no content in it. Not no content. There's very little. You have to dig around and look for it. And in our way of seeing the world, you have to dig around and look for it by collecting actual money, and that will give your life value.
As you mentioned, really owning physical precious metals is a way to take a stand against this corrupt system, not only on a financial level, but this confusion we see socially right now. Where's that connection between owning sound money and standing against corruption in all areas?
Okay, well, if we accept the logical statement that gold is money right now, there is no such thing as fiat currency, and the dollar that we use it works as a money because it is exchangeable for gold. So if we close that window and we make the dollar no longer exchangeable for gold, then the government that is funding all of this inflation in every sector that it is funding can no longer do so. So really what happens to, I don't know, gender theory specialists in universities when their salaries can no longer buy anything for them? Well, they go away. What happens to all of these social media companies that censor speech, and then they have to compete with a more free speech platform? They go away. What happens to let's say a doctor that doesn't really care about the personal health of his patients, and he just prescribes drugs that make people feel worse, and his practice can no longer be supported by government grants or a hospital that's getting government money. They go away. So as you collect gold and silver, you're hollowing out whatever substance is left for them to spend money on whatever part of the economy or whatever part of industry they want to manipulate. The faster we can hollow that out, the more corruption we can stop. And it's inevitable. It's not like they're going to win. They're hollowing it out themselves by spending money on all these parts of the industrial system that they're corrupting. So the question is, are we going to try to speed this up or not? And I think the faster we do it, the more that we can save. And not everything is going to collapse. There's going to be some salvageable. There's going to be things to salvage. There's going to be some good parts of the world left. Not everything's going to go bad. But when you buy gold and silver, you're hollowing out whatever ability they have to corrupt whatever it is they want to corrupt, whether that's the military, medical, educational, all the stuff that they spend all their government money on. Once that government money can no longer buy any gold, it can't buy anything. It can't buy influence. It can't buy corruption. It can't buy anything. And that's what we want.
And why would it be that if you stop the dishonesty in the monetary system, that you would necessarily stop only the corruption? It seems like you'd kind of stop the system completely, the good and the bad.
You would. You'd stop a lot of the good too. There's no way to filter any of it out. This is a self-destruct button, or ejecting the warp core, as some people like to say. So what is true is that when the monetary system fails, yeah, everything will stop. But then who's going to restart it? The answer is the people with the money. And who are the people with the money? It's you and me and people who see what is going on now. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to communicate to everyone what is going on. More and more people will wake up as the days pass, and they are, and we are, and we're reaching more people. We're never going to reach everyone. So the point is, yeah, everything stops at the moment that the dollar can no longer buy anything. But then it's up to us to restart it, which is why we have to stack the money now so that we can restart it. And once we restart it, we can restart the good parts, right? And not fund the bad parts. Everything becomes more decentralized. You do have a breakdown of centralized control, which is going to leave some pockets of real dangerous anarchy, which is why I say you got to stay out of the cities. I mean, we just saw it happen in France. This is not in a vacuum. It's going to happen in other countries. It's happening in other countries. And as the money substitute, as the dollar itself dies faster, more of these cities are going to start to burn. So you got to stay out of it. And I don't want to get all apocalyptic, and I don't think the world is going to end, but there's going to be some problems, and it's going to be up to us to rebuild what we can, which is why we have to do this.
And if I'm trying to understand more fully here, kind of your premise, because it seems like if we kind of just keep the system as it is, then we're seeing more and more centralization. But if we promote more and more people to the small guys, right, to own real assets, to take charge, then they can be the ones to rebuild the system in a sense. So it's this decentralization, not like advocating pure anarchy or anything, but recognizing that the system is going to fail, and the solution has to come from the communities. It can't come from this large centralized body. Is that kind of what you're trying to say?
Yes, that's another way of putting it. We have to take responsibility for our communities instead of just like laying back and hoping that God will save us, which is, it's a part of what we have to do. Praying, I believe, has a real purpose, and it focuses our minds and it keeps us grounded and not hopeless, and connects us with the eternal, which I think is essential for anyone who takes their life seriously or what they have to do. So while I do not advise against praying, I advise for praying. Prayer is very important. It also means taking responsibility in a real scary sense that people are going to be reliant on you. They're going to be reliant on us. We are the remnant that understands what's going on. I mean, when Mises escaped the Nazis in, I think it was 1941, 1942, I forgot which year exactly, but he barely escaped. And I think it was NYU that gave him, an honorary professorship and put him in some kind of broom closet so he could teach a few students without any pay. And that's when he wrote Human Action. I mean, this is like the stuff that you read in fairy tales of how good, how the last, shred of goodness was able to survive in, a friendly environment, but didn't, attract any attention. And then, Ron Paul read Mises, and then he decides to go and learn Austrian economics. And then from there, like the whole thing just kind of exploded just in time for, the collapse of the system for people like you and people like me to get out and just like blast what we can across the globe and just tell people like, okay, now we have the numbers. Now we have to start gelling together and start working. So people got to work in their communities. They've got to wake their communities up and be ready to be relied on, and to forgive people for not seeing it, because most of them are not. But when their lives are at stake, they're going to stop the nonsense and they're going to get down and work, because it's either that or die.
And it seems like in addition to investing in precious metals, obviously that's a way to take back your own sovereignty, to take responsibility. I think ownership in itself, instead of just renting everything, right, is important as well, and not necessarily relying on these large institutions to just, deliver things to your door. Can you expand on maybe some ways that people can build that community at home so that people can rely on you and you can rely on other people in your own local community, instead of just, subjecting yourself or, being submissive, I guess, to these large organizations and, big government?
I can tell you how I deal with it, and I'm not a perfect prepper or anything, far from it. But I mean, for example, I've given up on the school system, at least where I live in Israel. It doesn't mean that I don't send my kids to school. I do, because I want them to be around other children. And thank God they're not physically abused there, anymore after all the testing and all that other stuff that I had them avoid. But that's not happening anymore. So I keep them home, some 2 or 3 days a week, and they just go to school just to see their friends. And I don't expect any education there. I'm done with that. And I send them to local experts in different crafts. A neighbor of mine knows how to crochet, so she's teaching my daughters how to crochet. All this art in the back is from, a neighborhood woman who has an art class, so I send them to art. And I have my kids learn actual things to do in the physical world, which I think is much more valuable than them sitting in a classroom learning pretty much nothing. So get local, learn who the real experts. We hear about the experts, right? Forget about those worthless experts. There are experts in your community that know how to do things. You should know who they are. Write down their skills. Have a list of people. Somebody who knows carpentry, somebody who knows sewing, somebody who knows mechanics, whatever it is, and know who they are, know where they are, know how to reach them. So that that when the monetary system fails and you have gold and silver, you can say, look, I'll pay you. I want you to build this for me. I want you to plant these things in my backyard. Somebody who's a gardener who has skills. Just know the people in your immediate vicinity, let's say in a 10-mile radius or whatever, that knows how to do stuff, because those are the people that you're gonna build your community with. And you can even start now and start a barter circle with them, or some kind of network. The earlier you start, the less panicked you'll be when you absolutely need to rely on these people.
I think there's a lot of food for thought there. One thing that did come to mind is we've interviewed many times Alex Newman when you're talking about the getting your kids out of public school, or at least not 100% reliant on public schools. There's a great website, publicschoolexit.com, which we'll put in the link in the description of this video, that really gives information for people in the States who don't really know how to start by homeschooling, or really getting less reliant on public schools. It's a great resource. Any other resources? I know your website, the Endgame Investor, really helps people prepare for the end game, as you call it. But any other resources? And can you tell our viewers where they can find you online?
Resources for preparing for the end game. There's so much. I heard I forget what the names of these things are, but I heard in Texas there's like a meat. How do you say, like a meat cooperative, where you can buy meat with silver coins outside of Department of Agriculture regulation or anything like that, just under the table, and a meat resource, because meat is under attack. I forgot the name of it though, but the bigger these things are, the more decentralized, the better. But what I focus on is the engine room itself. Like we need to get rid of this warp core. We need to eject it. And then once we do, then we'll be floating in space for a while, unsure where we're going or what we're going to do. But then, we'll come together and we'll build something. So you can find the Endgame Investor on Seeking Alpha. You can put just in any search engine. And you'll find me in the first link. My YouTube channel, I talk about these things. I put about 1 or 2 videos a month, sometimes an interview. I try to make it funny and not as serious, because the way I keep myself sane is humor, or else I'd cry, and I don't want to do that. Or you can check me out on Patreon, where I give a biblical angle on these things. Patreon.com/endgameinvestor. And that's as little as $3 a month, and I put a once weekly video out connecting the Bible with monetary topics. That's how you can find me. And Twitter at Rafi Farber.
Fantastic. We'll put links to all those in the description of this video. Rafi, once again, thank you so much for your time, and God bless.
You too.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, Simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.